At this point in time, we don't know all the names in Marduk's Council of 12, also called the Olympians according to two of LPGC's informants, but LPGC has been able to find out at least a few of them, and their rank. It looks like the current hierarchy of the top Anunnaki on Earth are as follows. These 12 members are then pulling the strings of the following power centers. Like the organization board shows in Figure 8, there are 10 power centers altogether. Like 12 spiders in the net sit the top-rank Anunnaki, delegating their power downwards to the leaders of each power center, which are all supposedly humans, and/or hybrids. Those 10 leaders are then reporting directly to the 12 Anunnaki, the Council of 12, or C12. Logically, the C12 members then report to Marduk in person, either in board meetings or on an immediate basis, depending on the urgency. Not being totally convinced that Marduk is dead, I am still going to proceed as if he is alive. If he is not, what I am describing pertains to his successor, one of both of his two sons, Nabu and Jibal. After doing some research and made contact with appropriate sources, members of the LPGC managed to identify the 10 power centers with what seems to be quite some accuracy. They are the American, NATO Group, the Russia, Mafia Group, the Japan Incorporated Group, the China Incorporated Group, the OPEC Group, the Cartel, Triad Councils Group, the Supply-Margin Economic, political groups in Latin America and Africa headed by Brazil, Latin America, and South Africa, Africa. The 7 members of the ecumenical community led by the Roman Pope. The 2 trigger states, Iran and North Korea, as a wild card group. The economic, political group known as G8. Please take note here, because what the LPGC actually say in between the devil and the incoming rock is that the above is the Anunnaki pyramidal metastructure on Earth, not that the Anunnaki is the only alien power force which controls the planet from the ground or beyond. I just want to emphasize this clear again, so the reader can keep it in mind for future reference. 8. The earthbound Anunnaki, how they look like and their whereabouts. Before we start talking about the whereabouts of the earthbound, I'm sure the reader is curious if there are any photos of real Anunnaki, besides from Sumerian clay tablets. The answer would be that there most certainly are, but they are not on the internet. However, I have in my possession a photo of a first or second generation Anunnaki female hybrid, taken in Puerto Rico. This is how they apparently look like, at least in our 3D reality, I may add. More on this later. This particular photo has a story behind it, which I need to tell. It was taken by Dr. Borden in a meeting in Puerto Rico. This particular LPGC member, whom of course knew about their existence from earlier annual meetings, was surprised to meet 4 of these beings in the Puerto Rico gathering. Borden told me that these beings were taller than humans, but not tremendously taller, somewhere between 6 to 7 feet. They look like albinos, with white, kinky hair, which they sometimes wear long and sometimes short, like in figures 9A and 9B. Their eyes are red when seen in certain light, and the red eyes in this picture is the only thing that has been manipulated, according to LPGC. The picture was not meant to come in public domain, and certainly not on the internet, only for circulation between the LPGC scientists. The eye color was enhanced to emphasize their real eye color, which did not come out well on the original photo. Although I felt I had established a relationship with the LPGC, and especially with Dr. A.R. Borden, I was skeptic at first when I saw the photo, because I did a search on the internet and could easily find the photo on different websites. Some even suggested it was a Photoshop job of the Polish model, Anja Rubik. I decided to send the alleged Anunnaki female photo to 2 different Photoshop experts. The first one wants to be anonymous, but the second one was Barbara Brown, aka Wyolawa, wyolawapress.com, of native Indian descent, whom in my opinion has done amazing research into the exopolitical scene, mostly by using Photoshop as a tool. More often than not, she's been right on. I didn't mention anything about what I'd been told about this photo. In both cases they came back with the same answer: this person is not totally human, but a hybrid. Waiolawa even said she seemed to have some kind of overlay. Reptilian? We'll see. Anja Rubik, on the other hand, having quite some similarities in looks with the Anunnaki female, is not the same person. The observant reader can see that if he looks carefully, but one may ask if Miss Rubik may actually be an Anunnaki hybrid as well? I will left that question hanging, and if someone wants to look into that, it may be worth the effort. LPGC guarantees that this is how the earthbound females look like, and they tell me they know this from face-to-face encounters, and also by using extra neurosensing, ENS, remote viewing. To complete the story about the photo of the Anunnaki female, it was stolen, and I know this to be fact, from LPGC by an imposter, who joined the group, pretending to do so with the best of intentions. He joined under the name Roy W. Gordon. The photo was supposedly taken in 2006, and sometime in 2008, Roy Gordon stole it, and other sensitive information, and escaped. The photo was later posted on the internet by the organization that Gordon is a member of, SALM, or the NSA, National Security Agency, located in Pine Gap, Australia, known for its huge amount of reptilian sightings. And also one of the major bases for Marduk-associated intelligence agencies. SALM stands for Supreme Anunnaki Assembly of Lord Marduk. Figure 11 below is showing the SALM version of the Anunnaki female. Click on image to enlarge. The information added to this photo in form of text is inaccurate and part of a disinformation campaign by Marduk's Pine Gap faction, according to LPGC. SALM, a department of NSA, was also involved in a smear campaign against James Casbolt, the MI6 whistleblower and mind-controlled slave, when he decided to go public. They managed to discredit him to such an extent that Casbolt had to pull his website, casbolt.com, a few years ago. We will spend more time on SALM and their possible connection with the top-secret labyrinth group within the NSA in a special section of this paper. We have already talked about Pine Gap, Australia, but where else can we find the earthbound Anunnaki and their first and second generation hybrids? LPGC did some research on this, and had great help from their informants. Informants 1, 3, and 4, 2005, 2006, led them to Puerto Rico and the Ngorongoro region of the Great Rift Valley, in the Serengeti National Park of Tanzania, Africa. Figure 12b, Map 2, Serengeti and Ngorongoro crater area. Informants 3 and 4, independent of each other, confirmed that there indeed is a Anunnaki presence in the Tanzania area, including UFO activity. When comes to the Puerto Rico, the LPGC were not able to confirm any of the reports received concerning the Ayllunk region, near the U.S. Naval Base at Roosevelt Roads, in northeast Puerto Rico, except for a number of confirmed disappearances of people in the experimental forest area near the naval base, and the unusual number of albinos in the area. However, Dr. Borden knew about the Anunnaki activity in Puerto Rico, at least as early as 2006, when the photo of the female was taken. Apparently, he decided to exclude that from the evidence at the point of the writing of his essay in 2007. Most likely, it had to do with the embarrassment of Roy W. Gordon's infiltration which led to the theft of the photo. I really don't know the real reason for Borden excluding his own encounters with the earthbound in his essay, though, but the above is a qualified guess. Dr. Borden is not very fond of talking about the Roy Gordon incident, and he gets easily aggravated when discussing the subject with me. I want to add some more detailed background information on Dr. Borden's encounter with the 4 Anunnaki hybrids, because it could be of interest to the reader and our further research on the earthbound. Dr. Borden told me that they, Borden and others, whomever they are, however, is not clear, did some work as subcontractors for a contractor in 2006, which led them to go down from California to Puerto Rico. Here is the story in Dr. Borden's own words. Now, the event that led to the photo from my end. In '06, we had an opportunity to do some work for a contractor as subcontractors, which required two of us to head down under for pressing the flesh and drying the ink on paper. The photo in question was one I took of a female, approximately 6 feet 2 inches, dressed in a very white dress draped over one shoulder, in other words, the female in the photo in question. The photo was taken at exactly 41 degrees inclination to the plane on which she was, that is, the ground floor of a large building, structure that housed a research center of sorts at an underground facility. The picture was taken with an old SLR and developed on site by people from the installation. 4 shots were taken of her, 2 of which were overexposed with one of those somewhat blurry. All upstairs pictures of her were taken with a telelens. The other one is one taken at the same level and there are people around her. The occasion was a party, reception in our honor, and there were 4 of them, 3 males and this female. We were not allowed to take any pictures of the males, but I was told that I could take no more than 5 pictures of her, but that all of the background images of the setting in which the subject was had to be changed. This was done subsequently, in digitized form, putting a blank background, which it is visible and evident on the picture. Her eyes were red at close range, but even the clearest augmentation of the digitized original did not show her eyes clearly. So color was augmented manually. That was the only touch given to the original. The other 3 almost immediately joined us. I know she had called them over via mind-on-mind communication, and asked her if she had done so. She acknowledged she had, and this surprised her even more. On that occasion, in fact that evening, my party and I learned these 4 were members of the ground group and that their home site was in Puerto Rico. The one clear picture of her was retouched and background changed, leaving her form intact but with the eye color accentuated in red. I did not make the changes, but I can say that the picture of the female I met is the likeness of the individual depicted on the photograph in question. My question, given the likeness between Anja and this female, is whether there is a biological connection between them. I raise that question because it is known that pure Sam, Sa.A.M.I. Wes comment, and Sam hybrid females are known to engage in intercourse with human males and to conceive children who are then 2nd and 3rd generation hybrids. Same with Sam males of the ground group. This photo was not released, to anyone by us, according to agreement with the contractor of record. We believe we were invited to come as a way of establishing bona fides that the contractor was indeed in direct contact and had access to Sam's. We were satisfied that this was indeed the case, and the case was closed. We then proceeded to perform the work for the contractor, were paid for our work, and that was the end of it. Except for the RWG affair, Roy W. Gordon, Wes's note, which began to unravel shortly after our return from Down Under. Things got quite nasty with the man who had been planted in our midst, and who had gone down with us. We are certain in hindsight that the man who returned back was not the same man who went down. I am also aware of the Casbolt case, as James came to us for possible deprogramming. Nothing came of it, and contact with him was broken. Now, in appearance, those who are from the home planet are taller than those who belong to the ground group here. The 3 male individuals we ran across were 7 feet in height or over, but not as tall as those whom we met during link sessions, nor like those who picked me and my dad up in 1956 in South America during a fishing trip on a river between Brazil and Paraguay. All of this happened about 4 years ago. In the aftermath of the RWG affair, we did a thorough house cleaning of the disaster he brought to our doors. We have a working relationship with many people and used every contact known to us in finding out who and what was this man doing and representing. Among the things he left behind was a clean picture of this female without the poorly done description of her on the lower left-hand corner. I have no doubt this picture you showed me has been doctored and that we were not the only ones in possession of the digitized form now circulating. However, I was the one taking the picture and the picture is not taken at same level and it is not a frontal picture of her. She is gazing slightly to one side of the camera, as Ed argues in his video study of the photo. After I'd asked Dr. Borden some additional questions, the details became even clearer. He was very generous with explaining this to us, UFO researcher Ed Komarek, exopolitics.blogspot.com, and me. I am publishing this, because I think it's important, due to that it gives credibility to Dr. Borden's claims of having taken the photo of the female. I will not include information here which is of a personal nature, currently off-limit for publication, or off-subject. The occluded sections between the included ones will be marked like this. The rest is word for word. There were 4, not 5 viable pictures. I remember taking 5, which is why I said 5. Again, the pictures of her I took with an SLR in color from about 80 feet distance, a little less than 30 meters. I was on a first or second mezzanine up, which made for the angle of view, which in the first picture I took, she had just come through a door that was to her right in the photo you sent. Again, all photos were developed on site and given to us before departure. The 5th I was told did not come out. I did not pursue it. Her eyes were, well, have you ever seen someone who is suffering of pink eyes, conjunctivitis? It is something of a pinkish red from a distance, and the color remained pinkish on closer view, about 6 feet. We were never allowed to touch or be close, sick, to them. Yes, there are pictures of her, one overexposed, the other with spots on her. These pictures were not sanitized, that is, background removed. There was an additional photo taken the angle of which made her be at profile from me. These photos are in the possession of the contractor. All of them were retrieved when RW's thing began to unravel. However, I am not going back to them to ask for these pictures. That's one dog I am going to let stay asleep. What really happened is a black mark on the contractor and on us, and revisiting the RW affair just ain't going to happen. Some of your and Ed's suppositions about Gordon are not far-fetched at all and are closer to what happened. But that's all I will say about it. Obviously, there are problems with this photo. We had no reasons to distrust the product given to us at the time. Only one was photoshopped, none of the others were changed in any way. One of the things I would suggest is to not use that photo at all. There are better ones out there. When meeting the informants for the information XXXX, name excluded, and I reported in assay, pictures surfaced corroborating their likeness, although some at simple viewing of the photo told us the objects of the photo were hybrids. There are also photos taken by a fellow I know, who is photographically pursuing them around the world, and there are some taken by him or by one of his collaborators from either Argentina or Chile showing SAMs up in the mountains of the Andes, my emphasis. I have not seen them, but I trust his word, since he's provided images of the skeletons of giants that are not in the public domain, which we've been able to verify with LPGC members from Russia that these were indeed viable, real, photos. Then there are photos of SAMs living in northern Wisconsin, my emphasis, we know about, photos of which are harder to come by, so XXXXXXX, my friend, has been making personal attempts at getting one or more. There is also a retired Master Sergeant, sick, who was stationed in San Antonio, Texas, my eyes, who had taken distance photos of 2 of them in military uniform without insignias. So there are photos. With patience we will get to them, witness what is happening in South America. I'm staying in touch with a Chilean, an Argentinian and a Paraguayan, all of them working with video as the medium of capture. There are technical problems with video, they never worked for us in person with any of them. Digital photography is best. It does not lie and it does not change the subject. Now, let me address something that, once either or both of you come in FTF, face-to-face, editor's note, contact with any one of them, and become familiar with these folks, the last thing you think about is photographing them. There are too many other things on focuses on while this is happening. There is also the issue that some will not allow you to take pictures of them. Then there are some whose body electrostatic and electromagnetic fields is so high that it distorts even a digital picture. Or, better said, the digital photo comes out distorted, like as if the space around the body is broken up. And, Ed, wordy as this may be, until you have been in front of any one of these people, that's all I have to explain the experience. Please hear this as well. This is not about disclosure, this is about connecting. So, first of all, a few new locations are exposed to us in the above email: Argentina and Chile, and up in the Andes, Wisconsin and Texas. Dr. Borden also tells me in a letter dated December 2, 2010, that the faction living in the Andes come from the Cydonia Plains on Mars, and moved to the Chile mountain range just a few decades ago. Some of them can also be found along the Peruvian, Ecuadorian border. And here is some recent information I heard on a Pleiadian lecture from the summer of 2011. They say there are underground bases in the Middle East where some of the Anunnaki reside. They have lots of technology available to them down there, and they pretty much steer the major events in the Middle East from underground, partly by changing the brain frequencies on humans living on the surface, putting beliefs and ideas into their heads, which people think are their own. This is done with the intention to create and fuel conflicts of choice. A similar thing was done in Egypt during the uproar in the beginning of 2011. To summarize, these are the sites the Anunnaki have been spotted on Earth in present time with quite some certainty. Pine Gap, Australia. Puerto Rico, South America. The Andes, the Chile, South America. The Ngorongoro region of the Great Rift Valley, in the Serengeti National Park of Tanzania, Africa. Northern Wisconsin, USA. Texas, USA. Underground bases in the Middle East. Secondly, Dr. Borden, and the LPGC in general, are not for ET disclosure, but for connection. It sounds pretty black and white when we read it like this, out of context, but there is much more to that statement, something we will discuss in the solution papers. I actually believe that they is correct, but to understand what I mean by that, we do have to dig into the issue much deeper, which we will. 9. Marduk's challenges. Although Marduk is using ancient techniques to control us via networks of secret societies, businesses, religion, banking etc., his problem is, and has always been, numbers. The latest intel on him and his pure Anunnaki followers is telling us that they are about 330 in numbers, and every once in a while, they have been the target of snipers. That, and other reasons, have been what has reduced the numbers of the fallen and the Nephilim. Hence, they have been said to have been forced to do two things: fine-tuning their networks in attempts to have them work more efficiently, and reduce the numbers of Lulus, we humans. The second is supposedly done, among other things, by creating wars, famine, disease, poisoning our food etc. The latter is doubtful. I know that it has been in circulation amongst researchers for perhaps 20 years now, I was one of them, that the global elite want to reduce the population down to perhaps 500 million people. That's a huge reduction. If they'd wanted to do that with the technologies which they have available, they would have done so by now. Instead, the population has increased to 7 billion. My personal thought is that the PTB, powers that be, is just waiting out the natural catastrophes ahead, and they can help the disaster by adding their own weapon of mass destruction to the soup. The man-made disasters and weather changes they have already orchestrated fill other purposes, like inducing fear in the population, and biological warfare, and to make duller people easier to manipulate. The wars, on the other hand, are just the old never-ending wars between the gods. That's where the fine-tuning comes in. Marduk knows about the increase of energies from the galactic center and our own sun, which brings information on gamma rays to us here on Earth. It's happened before, the last time we were lined up with the galactic center, the womb of the mother, as the Pleiadians call it, about 26,000 ago, and in a lesser degree 13,500 years ago, when our solar system was lining up with the central sun the last time. This time around, during the nanosecond, between 1987 to 2012, many people are prepared and ready to download the information from the galactic center, our own sun, and the universe in general. This is a big thing where numbers count again. Marduk knows he can't do much about the mass awakening, unless he kills off an incredible amount of people, and the question is if he actually would succeed anyway. There are ways, mentioned above, he can reduce the population. But the question is if he will succeed. Some may think that the global elite is united, but they are far from it. There are serious conflicts and disagreements on higher levels, which may be fortunate for us, as it delays any major actions against us, and gives us more time to get the job done on our end. The major challenges I see Marduk facing today are disagreements within his own circle of people. The ancient conflict between the Ram clan and his own Serpent clan. There are still those loyal to the kingdom residing here on Earth, making life harder for Marduk. We may ask ourselves if we should line up with them to fight Marduk and his cohorts, but I would definitely say no to that. We don't want to be involved in more massive wars that no one can win. And violence always feeds violence. If you kill with the sword, you shall die by the sword. Etc. Basic karma is what it is. The mass awakening of Alulis. This is a major factor he may, or may not, know how to deal with successfully. However, as mentioned above, that part may take care of itself, similar to when the Enlil just let the Lulis die in the deluge. In my book, Marduk if not worse than the Enlil, YHVH. The incoming Nibiru. He soon has to face his nemesis, King Nannar, whom reportedly is here to destroy Marduk and his network. In all his pride, Marduk may still think he can beat them, which will probably be his Achilles heel. If we are to believe Bible prophecies, Marduk, Satan will not succeed, but there will be a big battle of Armageddon, where many people will die in the so-called final war of the gods. Of course, humans will once again be used as foot soldiers. What Marduk has done is to take advantage of time speeding up during the nanosecond. He is forcing us humans to work harder and harder, multitasking to the extent that we can no longer think, because we don't have time. The Pleiadians call this functional insanity, which I think is a great description of the situation. The result, however, is that many people get so caught up in the fast pace of life, which is intentionally created, that we don't have time to think about deeper issues that would actually help solving our problems. The immediate resolution is to slow down. We need to stay calm, meditate, and calm down the frantic energies, or we'll succumb. This trap is very cleverly set up, and on the surface it seems like pure insanity, but if we look at it from Marduk's point of view, it's ingenious. There are many challenges ahead of us, and the Anunnaki problem is only one of many, as we shall see. Humankind needs to be prepared, or we stand no chance of survival. Of course, as always, mankind will survive as a species, but our numbers will be significantly reduced. Still, there are things we can do, and we have help behind the scenes, both from here and above, so to speak. And I'm not talking only about ETs, but our own higher selves/oversouls/sovereign integral, whatever we want to call it. We have a lot to go through in the solution papers. I have another diagram I want to show you, which is included in Borden's Journal of End Time Studies Volume 1, January to June 2007, Between the Devil and the Incoming Rock, and that is another pyramid power structure, looked at from a slightly different angle, showing the information flow going in two directions, downward and upward, where the latter is meant to be a clear flow, where all information goes from down to the top, while the downward flow is restricted and on a need-to-know basis. This also has to do with more off-world policies, and this structure is being implemented as we speak, if the interpretation of the situation is correct. As usual, when a picture is not clear, click on it to enlarge. The ultimate challenges for Marduk and his human and not-so-human underdogs will be the incoming planet, Nibiru. The arrival is still a few generations in the future, But if we are to believe what old prophecy says, and we should, the S.A.M.I from the home planet will defeat Marduk and his global elite and then rule us for another 3,600 years in something that can be described as paradise on earth, or heaven of earth. But who gave us these prophecies? Who gave the information to John the Divine and Daniel? It should be quite obvious to the reader by now. If we study the chain of events here, we can quite easily see who is who. Marduk being Satan, Nannar and his people from the home planet being our saviors, second coming of Nibiru. Namar, the Enlil, is the primary YHVH, Jehovah, although YHVH/YHWH is a composite of different Anunnaki, and Ea, Ankur, the Enki, is Lucifer, who gave Adam and Eve wisdom in the Garden of Eden, Eden. According to the Bible, the prophecies written therein are of divine origin, and if we look at the information I shared here a few sentences ago, we can see who the divine, God, is. I have always been fascinated by the early Wingmaker's material, and how accurate much of it is after some 13-odd years under scrutiny. James, the writer and interpreter of the material, writes regarding the Anunnaki and the S.A.M.I. The genetic library that thrives upon Earth is a form of currency that has no price tag. All I can say is that its value far exceeds anything that human thought could imagine. And with this incredible value, our planet attracts interest from a wide range of extraterrestrial races, and this is as true today as it was 1,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. Objects of inestimable value and rarity, such as Earth, attract beings from outside our planetary system that desire to control them, which makes Earth an extraordinary object of attraction. It's precisely this attraction that has brought the concepts of evil to our psyche. LPGC has discussed this matter with those from the home planet, so what does this species have to offer? LPGC, on behalf of humankind, came with the following suggestion. What we are suggesting, instead, is the development of a network of Canton-like like-minded and like-disposed peoples who accept, realize, choose to, and develop means to open themselves to possibilities. We know the kingdom is coming back, and the kingdom and humankind are bound to each other by genetic makeup and past, some of which must be unlearned and undone in the present so that a peaceful future could be possible for both them and us. Dr. Borden of LPGC ends his essay with the following. What we are suggesting is not a war or even resistance to Marduk or those who carry out his plans and objectives. This would be, indeed, futile, to borrow a phrase from Roddenberry and his Star Trek Next Generation paradigm. Then there is the matter of the dedicated human said to be returning with them, who is to assume the combined offices of N.Ki and N.Lil as First Lord of Earth, or something like that, in some kind of direct democracy. It would be nice to know what his 60 epithet names will be. 26. This will tell us a great deal of what to expect from what he is to offer to the remnant humankind left after the forecast defeat and imprisonment of Marduk, following some final confrontation of forces prophesied in biblical sources. All of the preceding would require of us that we change our views of what is to come and face them, not in religious or doctrinal ways, but rather in well-informed and thoughtful exopolitical and scriptural ways. Why scriptural as well? We also need to know what is required of us in the dedicated humans program for a post-Marduk Earth. We contend it is not an accident that much of what written patrimony left to us has been altered and in some cases changed completely to suit doctrinal and institutional hegemonies and power. We are also not suggesting a naive, Pollyanna-like worldview of what is to come, quite the contrary. We suggest we must become informed not just about Marduk and his program, but also about the kingdom and the dedicated humans' paradigm of an Earth seemingly patterned after what Ni.by.ru sees 25 working for them. Will it also work for us? We are not suggesting it will not. We are asking that we begin a dialogue on these two seemingly diametrically opposed options, and learn what we may already know deep within us, all that is best for us. Is prophecy set in stone? Is it totally predetermined? Of course not. Is it likely to happen? Yes, some, if not most of it, because it's planned that way. By getting people hooked to world religions and their offspring and cults and sects, via priests, religious leaders, mass media et al., we are constantly bombarded with religious propaganda, which makes it easier for the prophecies to stick. To our favor is the mass awakening that's going on as I write this. Prophecy, however, is always slippery, because humans are very unpredictable. When comes to Bible prophecy and other ancient prophecies, much of that is more likely to stick, because humankind is secretly steered in the direction of fulfilling these old predictions. There are those behind the scenes who work furiously to make these prophecies come true, but they are also determined by the plans of off-planet beings, over whom we have little control. I can empathize with Dr. Borden's statements above, seeing it from his, and LPGC's, perspective. However, as they mention in so many places in their different essays, the C.A.M.I. and the Anunnaki are just a small faction of ETs in near-Earth space, and they all have their imperatives. We know the history of the C.A.M.I. and their mindset, and this is evidence we can't discard. If someone says they have changed now, I wouldn't take that as face value. Anybody can say that, or that they're working on unity. The 60 epithets of Nanner would indeed be nice to see. First of all, there are other ways to get rid of Marduk and his followers, and that is to educate ourselves, reading material like this, make it our own, work on our spiritual wholeness, spirit/mind/body, and our fear will diminish considerably. It has worked for me, astoundingly so. Knowing what I know and working on myself has left me with very little fear left inside. This is the stage we want to reach. This is a 100th monkey syndrome we want to achieve. Because remember, even Marduk and any other negative visitors, in our terms, are here because they perceive our fear. Those who have read Hidden Hand know exactly what I'm talking about. You who haven't, here is the link again, IlluminatiNews.com web link, and I advise you to read it now. Stop here and read it first before you move on in this text if you haven't read it before. Then come back here and continue. It's that important. All challenges we are meeting now and in the future have a purpose. They are mirrors of our own fears and weaknesses as individuals and as a humanity, and they come into our existence to teach us lessons so we can grow. They are catalysts. How well will you and I survive? Well, it depends on how well we master fear and have taken care of our karma. The timelines are opening up and we are becoming more multidimensional. This means we also need to face our own fears and overcome them. We need to forgive ourselves and others, create a positive environment in our local universe and always work on having good thoughts about self, others, and the environment, and feel unconditional love towards everybody and everything. Unconditional love and service to others are the big keys. Listen to your heart, it's always telling you something important. Then, but first then, can you connect with your higher self and become an island in a stormy ocean? The waves may whip against your shores, but they won't penetrate the island. You can watch them, see the beauty in them, and do nothing else but that. Then the waves will stop right there and conform into what you want them to be, a manifestation of beauty, not of fear. Think like this sounds too simplistic and too naive? Think again. If a solution is not simple, it's not the best of solutions. Everything is simple in its core, we are the ones who complicate things with our logical minds. The multiverse isn't just logical, it's fluid and ever-changing. And who is changing it? We are. This doesn't mean it's easy to change old patterns, beliefs and paradigms that are no longer working in our favor. We need to work on this one by one and face our limitations and fears, see them for what they are and overcome them. Not by fighting them, but to understand them, accept them and let the negativity and fear connected to them go. That's how we grow, because our positive energies are contagious and spread like a wildfire. Be a positive example, and others will follow. They have no choice, because you show them who they really are. When Marduk and his global elite have no reasons to be catalysts for us anymore, and their terror doesn't bite, their difficult job is finished. The real solution is not out there, but in here, inside. When we look at things, we need to understand that whatever it is, it has more layers to it, always. Make it a rule to always look at things from the highest possible level, and you will have a much greater understanding for things happening around you. Instead of being frustrated or afraid, think, how can this serve me? What is the learning lesson in all this? Only then will you become more enlightened. I can't emphasize enough how much this kind of thinking has helped me. In the same manner, we need to look at Marduk, the global elite and others, whom apparently have not our best interests in mind, at least not from our third density level perspective. They are doing a job that you and I didn't want to do. In that sense, deep inside themselves, within their energetic hearts, there is a tremendous love for us humans and everything else living. They manifest this by being our opposites, catalysts. Would you like to play the role of the evil guys? Not if you know what karma that would bring onto you. On the highest level, they are here to help us grow. They may have forgotten that on a conscious level, some of them have not, but they are still playing out their role. It's up to us to recognize this and overcome our worst enemy, fear. And the evil ones feed from it. When there is no fear, there is no longer any place for them. It may be a rude awakening, but this is how it is. It's up to us. The interesting thing is that the earlier creator gods, like the Pleiadians and the Vegans, whom, being the original creator gods of mankind, have better reasons to govern us, instead want to teach us to govern ourselves, without much help from outside forces, including themselves, except for giving practical advice when asked for. We need to think about if maybe this is what would be preferred. Unfortunately, the scientific community, even the Rouge ones, have a hard time accepting the metaphysical beings that are here to guide us in these times. Yes, the best of the scientists are acknowledging them and may even say that the metaphysical entities may have their ducks in a row, but don't understand the dynamics. I would say, maybe they do. Maybe they really do, at least the most advanced of them. More of this in the solution papers. 10. Supreme David Rockefeller and the Thule Order. Almost exactly 2 years ago, June 2009, I published the last version of the ebook online about Supreme David Rockefeller and the Thule Gesellschaft, Thule Order, Thule Society. It was a blockbuster on the internet. When I published the first version in the beginning of 2009, I had more than 500,000 visitors in a week. However, as information came in and things were revealed, the first version, with all its flaws and misinterpretations, later matured into the myth of David Supreme Rockefeller, which became the last, and much more accurate version of the book, published, as I said, in June of 2009. Even today, 2 years later, many people are probably wondering who he really is and what the Thule Society was all about. So let's try to put it more in perspective, and start with Supreme David Rockefeller, SDR. There is something very mystical about him, which attracts a lot of people. No smoke without a fire, as the saying goes. 10.1 Supreme Rockefeller in review. There was a lot of debate whether this man is legitimate or not. He was and still is, claiming that he has the mana sola of both Marduk, Lucifer, Ea, YHWH, the Enlil, and more. What does he mean by this? Does it mean that he is all these beings? First, we once again have to explain what mana sola is. I am going to quote myself here from the Supreme Book. Mana sola means mani, moon, and sola, sol, sun. It can also be called moon-sun. It is the term for the lunar and solar principle. The lunar principle is the female, and the solar principle is the male fertilizing the female. It is also the story of the Holy Grail. The Grail itself is the lunar principle, the female vagina. Now, in a nutshell, a mana sola as is spoken of in this chapter, is that only of the superior deities. It is the life force and looks like a bright blue orb. Once it enters the womb, That life force can be reborn and the child will have the same physical characteristics from the past and the memories as well. Wilhelm Landig, an esoteric writer, most probably a Thule member, wrote about Manasola in his book, Götzen gegen Thule, Godlets Against Thule. They are living, intelligent biomechanical entities with a complex life cycle that begins as a circle of light and continues through a metallic form before reaching the reproductive stage. Through a regenerative process, a new Manasola grows within the womb of the adult. The regenerated part is expelled by the remaining mother nucleus as a new energetic circle of light, corresponding to a birthing technique. This new circle enters on the same 7 developmental stages, while the expelling maternal element rolls itself into a ball, which then explodes. The metallic remains contain particles of copper. The optical impressions that eyewitnesses of these Manasolas have had up to now are basically quite uniform. In the daytime they display an extremely bright gold or silver luminescence, sometimes with traces of rose-colored smoke which then often condense into grayish-white trails. At night the discs shine in glowing or glossy colors, showing on occasion long flames at the edges and red and blue sparks, which can grow so strong as to wreathe them in fire. Most remarkable is their power of reaction against pursuers, like that of a rational creature, far exceeding any possible electronic self-steering or radio control. Landig goes on to describe how, throughout the ages, all mythologies refer in one way or another to the Manasolas, which are seen as symbols of spiritual potency, unity and love. These Manasolas and their accompanying manifestations are a representation of the morphogenetic grid in all its aesthetic glory. According to Landig's book, they have been interpreted in various ways by different cultures. This also has something to do with the thought forms being projected. If one studies the 3rd and 4th dimensional aspects of sacred geometry, one can see that these Manasolas are Kabbalistic vessels of creation. The Manasolas, or biomachines, are primarily 4th-dimensional interfaces with the life force itself. 29. My first mistake, when writing about SDR, was that I thought he was saying that he actually was all these deities. He never did. He said he had the Manasola of all of them. Is that possible? Hypothetically, yes. After you, the reader now hopefully has become familiar with the SID.A.M.I. and the Anunnaki from my previous papers, you are aware of the different major players on the Anunnaki stage. If you look at the beings Supreme says he's got the Manasola from, most of them are Anunnaki and related by blood. Now add to the picture that the Anunnaki were master geneticists. They could easily create something like Supreme, very easily. They take a little piece of the life force off all these named beings and blend them together. Then they are able to program their creation so that certain traits become more prominent than others, and we have the personality the creator gods want, in this case, Supreme Rockefeller with the primary personality of Marduk Ra. But is he even human? I would say he is half human, half machine. That's what the above definition of Manasola explains. He is artificial intelligence, of sorts. This is one option, which is more plausible than many people may think. And this is what Supreme himself says he believes he is. So let us stay with this thought for a while, pretending this is the case and see what develops. If SDR has the Manasola of all these Anunnaki entities, and a few reptilian traits as well, who would do that, and why? Obviously someone who wants the world to believe that SDR is Marduk Ra, or the current presentation of him. Of all the known players, who would have an interest in this, and why? Basically, only one, as I can see it, and that would be Marduk Ra himself. By creating someone like Supreme, he would have a forerunner and a distraction. For many, it's a double-edged sword. Those who believe SDR is a manifestation of Marduk of some sort will keep their focus on him instead of the real deal. Those who write him off as a hoax will be less likely to believe it when the real Marduk enters the stage, or his successors, in case he actually is diseased. Another hoax, they think. So Supreme, whether he is aware of this or not, would work pretty well as a forerunner and a distraction. Some people say he's just a prankster and a hoax. This is to simplify it to the extreme. There is more to the picture than meets the eye always. This whole Supreme Marduk issue started on the internet already in 2001, very subtly in the beginning, but it was there. Supreme was then 27 years old, born on December 22, 1974, which is normally the winter solstice, but the solstice was off one day that year, so he is almost born on the solstice, which makes it close enough. 10 years later, he is 36 years old, going towards his 37th birthday, and is still playing out the same story. Doesn't it get old after a while? Doesn't he grow up, and gets tired of this game if it's a hoax? One would think so. There are those saying he is using it to get to the girls in the many bars he is visiting. He is a chronic alcoholic, but which girl in her right mind would follow a guy home who says he is Marduk Ra? If he needs to use something to get girls interested in him, that would certainly be repelling. And besides, SDR is very verbal, intelligent, and has no problem getting girls without such cover story. I doubt he even mentions it to them when he works on seducing them. Only a few close friends know about it, apparently. The rest have no idea whom he claims he is. So that explanation does not hold water, either. The other side of Supreme is the well-dressed businessman, who travels around the world, supposedly meeting with people from the global elite. He very sophisticatedly uses his Facebook to keep people updated on his whereabouts, but in his role, that wouldn't come as a surprise. Still, is he really meeting with these important people? We don't know. He could just be a world traveler, using money from the profits from suspect business deals. Or he could actually be doing what he claims he does. Supreme has always trusted me, except when I published my second book about him, which I co-wrote with another person, a book I later withdrew from the internet due to that it was not accurately painting the picture of Supreme. It is still available at scribd.com for those who are interested. Just keep in mind that I withdrew it and am of the mindset that it should never have been published. My co-author, however, is of another opinion, but I, as the major writer, had the last say in the decision to take it down. The trust SDR has found in me has led to that he has revealed a few things to me which I've promised to keep between us. I am still holding on to my word and will not publish anything I've promised not to. All I want to say with this is that he has been more open to me sometimes than he would if he thought I would publish what he told me. One thing he reluctantly agreed to that I could say is that he wishes he doesn't have to do what he is doing. It's like a curse, but he can't just stop it, it's his destiny. I asked him if that's why he drinks a lot. The answer to that was ... silence. However, he said this in a context that makes me believe that he was not kidding me, he meant what he was saying, it was one of his buddy-to-buddy moments of confession. And this means that he is not totally in control of his own destiny, someone else is running the show. If so, we already know the purpose with the Supreme character, to distract and attract, in an effort from his handlers to displace our attention from the real deal. But what will be Supreme's end goal? If we listen to what he is saying in public, he will become the world leader, the Maitreya, the Messiah that the world has been waiting for. He is the second coming, the Jewish Messiah, but in new clothing, meaning that he now wants to unite all races and religions into one. And he is promoting the Urantia book as a reference to how the universe is structured, similar to the Wing Makers, who are also talking about 7 superuniverses, and gives special emphasis to the chapter about Lucifer's rebellion, which is a metaphor of Marduk's rebellion against the gods, the ones from Nibiru. Furthermore, he is supporting the rebuilding of Solomon's temple, which is another part of Bible prophecy of the end times, and this will be his temple, where he rules a united world. SDR's vision pretty much coincides with that of the real Marduk Ra, doesn't it? Of course, we know that Supreme is well read on the occult, ancient history, especially that of Sumer, Old Babylon and Egypt, the two latter being Marduk's old domains. But why this obsession with Marduk? because there is something to it, of course. A year ago or so, after I'd withdrawn my second book about him, Supreme said that the world will soon see him rise to power. I doubted it, and still does. Of course, it will not happen, but I was curious as to what steps he would take. What happened was that he started traveling the world, intensively. Quite an odd thing to do for a poor man, like some people have portrayed him. I have also seen pictures, not photoshopped, with SDR together with a few prominent people of the power elite, which I have promised not to publish at this time. Still, I can mention their existence, and I am sure they will be posted in due time. So he is not an innocent hoaxer, although he is not whom he says he is, either. He is not the coming Messiah or the Antichrist. These epithets are reserved for the Nibiru-Insa.A.M.I. and the real Marduk, respectively. Whether people believe the above explanation about who Supreme is or not, one thing is certain: the man is possessed. He has all the signs of being so. The major signs of entity possession are destructive and self-destructive behavior, irrational behavior, sudden extreme mood swings, drug and/or alcohol abuse, sexual obsession, sexual perversion, including pedophilia, pathological liar, violent behavior, including beating up a partner or a friend or a stranger on the street, being threatening or even violent when someone opposes him, her, whether in opinion or in action. There is more, but this will do for now. If a person has one or two of these traits, or more on rare occasion, doesn't mean he necessarily is possessed, but if it's repetitive and extreme in nature, stay away. And don't fight these entities, because they are often more powerful than humans are in their current state. Instead, if this happens to someone you know, work with it in dream state. Before you go to sleep, decide that your dreams are going to be about healing this other person. Doing so consistently may help tremendously. Back to our topic now. Before we discuss Supreme in these terms, let's compare with someone else, whom we know for a fact was possessed, and even admitted to it. I am talking about the late singer, Jim Morrison. Jim told us that he got possessed when he was very young and his family was driving in the deserts, and they saw a dead native Indian by the road. This affected the young Morrison so much that he unwittingly attracted and took on the spirit of this Indian, who showed to be a shaman. This empowered him a lot and helped him become the charismatic singer and songwriter the world appreciates. However, the price he had to pay was mental disorders, most of them listed above. He died at the age 27, in 1971 of heart failure due to extreme intake of alcohol, opiates and cocaine. He said that by the end of his life, the shaman left his body and he felt like an empty shell, not capable of doing anything of what he did before. So he simply went on a fast, drug-related suicide trip. If we now look at Supreme, we see a very similar pattern. It's enough to look at the list above to recognize these traits in him, including the same self-destructive behavior he shares with people like Jim Morrison and so many others, especially in the music and movie industries. I am going to leave it with that and continue with a, in my opinion, more interesting subject: Jarl Vidar and the Thule Society. 10.2 The Thule Society, Fulfillment of Prophecy, and the Gateway to the Gods. When I wrote the Supreme book, I learned as I went along. I did not have the same knowledge as I have now, 2 years later. Still, the Supreme book is something I am quite proud of, because it fills a very important purpose and is a springboard to these papers. There is a lot of valuable information in this earlier piece of work. Likewise, I knew very little about the Thule Society, their goals, and why they are doing what they are doing. I simply knew too little about our ancient history and the visits of the gods. Yes, I had read The Gods of Eden by William Branley, and Sitchin's The 12th Planet, but now I have plowed through more or less the whole Earth Chronicles by Sitchin, and studied other sources as well on the subject, and believe I've nailed it down quite well. This new knowledge puts the Thule in a whole new perspective. So let us contemplate a little bit on this. Jarl Vidar, the German Thule member, at one time wanted to use me because I am a musician. He wanted me to create a piece of music within certain guidelines and frequencies to open up the stargate to let the gods in. He was of course talking about the Anunnaki gods, who come from Nibiru. One of the purposes of the Thule order is to help with the transition of the gods when they leave their home planet and come down to Earth, giant beings, armed and ready. Then, Vidar is talking about the Battle of Armageddon, which will happen so that the Earth can be cleansed. He further told me that many people will die in the process, but when it's over, there will be paradise on Earth, where a selected few of the Nibiruans will rule us for another 1,000 years, in peace and harmony, so we can learn how to govern ourselves. As we can see, this is very similar to LPGC's perspective, although the Thule is supporting both sides of the conflict. And I will tell you why in a moment. Hitler saw this whole Nibiru, Marduk issue coming. He was in contact with them mind to mind, and he saw how they looked like, and he was terrified. He worked towards the goal of creating the Anunnaki kingdom, but it was too much for him to handle. It drove him insane and he started acting out in a very destructive manner. Some say that Hitler worked with the Dracos and the Greys, and it may very well be that those who showed themselves to him were reptilian in nature, but still working for the Anunnaki. Jarl Vidar, who is presently working in tight connection with Michael Noel Prescott, and together they have started a new branch of the Thule, which will embrace the new eon of the Anunnaki, is determined to follow the original protocols of the old prophecies. Jarl told me that the old Thule is still stuck in the old eon, but he and Michael are here to introduce the new one. Jarl is often talking about Shambhala, the old city underground. He says he's been there several times and met with the beings down there. He describes them as very gentle and loving, and they have lived there for a long time. They now need help, in different ways, from humans to support them in their mission. Some of them are reptoids. They probably also need strong, psychic humans, who can survive the end times. Thule is all about prophecy. This is the reason for the Triple Helix program. It's one way of connecting with the gods, and communicate with them. There are other, better ways, but it requires a lot of training, and the Triple Helix will probably do as surrogate until better ways of communicating can be established. We will talk about topological thinking in another paper. Jarl recently wrote on my Facebook wall that J.R.R. Tolkien was well aware of what is going on, and had actually been to Shambhala himself and met with the gods. I wouldn't be surprised, because it reflects in his Middle-earth books. Jarl also wants to take me down there whenever we get the chance, but I may opt out on that one. Jarl's only concern is to have the prophecies fulfilled. When I wrote the Supreme Book, people were wondering why Jarl didn't care whether those he worked with supported Marduk or the incoming S.A.M.I, but it makes sense, because he wants to bring about the Battle of Armageddon so that the world can be cleansed. He wants the war to happen, because he believes it's imperative for us to be able to create the new eon, the new earth, which will be paradise, where the gods will rule for 1,000 years in peace and harmony. Jarl is purposely trying to create the conflict necessary before the Nibiruans arrive and the battle can begin. Those who survive the wrath of the gods will be highly rewarded. A new phoenix will rise from the ashes. And we are still supposed to believe the incoming S.A.M.I are here for us? Jarl, loyal to his mission, is hooking up with Michael Prescott, who is a very dark person, because he believes Prescott is important for prophecy to be fulfilled. Prescott is using Mardukian magic when he is trying to achieve their goals, Mardukian magic being that given to us by Aleister Crowley, John Dee and others. The Thule and Jarl Vidar are not the only ones working furiously to make prophecy fulfilled. Most secret societies are, in their own way. We know from my LPGC sources that the incoming S.A.M.I can be very loving and gentle, but also quite cruel. They have no second thoughts about killing off anybody who is not supporting the kingdom, or is on Marduk's side. It sounds reasonable, Perhaps, for many who have suffered because of global elite policies and suppressive acts like war, mind control, torture, rape, and all the rest of it. But the Nibiruans also make it very clear that if you side with Marduk in any shape or form, you will not be forgiven and killed when they come, and your future generations will be punished for your deeds. Why do you think that is? Because they want to free us from Marduk's suppression? No, these gods want to implement their own laws, rules and policies on us humans here on Earth and make us part of the kingdom. They are conquerors, and by cleansing the Earth, killing off anyone who opposes them, what remains is a new generation of obedient sheep. Do they want to terminate the bloodlines of those who supported Marduk, because their future generations can become future rebels? I am not signing up for that even though I'm not supporting Marduk. Now, it doesn't impress me when we talk about imperatives here. When I discuss this matter with LPGC scientists, they are not foreign to the idea, saying that this is the C.A.M.I. way of handling things, because it's in their nature. That doesn't make them evil. In a sense, this is true. It's enough to look at our own human race to see how we solve our own problems, but the question is in that case, what are their imperatives? To me it's quite obvious. However, I am looking forward to a future in peace and harmony, where people slowly but surely raise their frequencies to overcome urges like war, revenge, and killing, for any given reason. If we welcome a species who are using the same violent policies that we do now, here on Earth, it is not helpful for humanity's growth. And it's certainly not in our interest to be part of the kingdom. Apparently, we are facing a war of huge proportions, where the Mardukian Anunnaki, together with the global elite and their foot soldiers, which could be you, your brother or your neighbor, will be furiously fighting the giants who are coming down here, fully armed, perhaps even with nuclear power. We humans, as usual, are caught between, and we are the ones who are going to suffer the most. Speaking of population reduction, it really doesn't matter if the war between the incoming and Marduk's branch are real opponents or if it's just staged. We humans are still caught in between. Then comes the execution patrol. If you sided with the global elite and fought on the wrong side, wittingly or unwittingly, you're going to be killed, and your future generations will be punished. Can you believe what kind of karma all this will create here on Earth? And we thought the old Atlantean karma is bad? Not mentioning all the trauma it will create in everyone living here. We all will lose people we love and know well in this final battle of the gods. In other words, once again, they bring down their wars here on Earth as above, so below. I am told there is not much we can do about the fact the Nibiruans are coming. And that they are angry. Not at us, supposedly, but at the ones who enslaved us the last couple of millennia. Yes, the incoming are siding with us, but what are the end game? We know what the Bible prophecy says and that's what is played out before our eyes. However, we need to realize that prophecy is either predictions made by those who want to enslave us so that we think it's predestined and set in stone, and sometimes prophecy is to warn us about what is ahead if we don't change our ways of acting and thinking. We will discuss workable solutions in the solution papers. The Pleiadians said we are a very unpredictable race, so let's prove them right. Because of prophecy, Jarl became very interested in Supreme. He knew Supreme was not Marduk, but had the Manasola of all these different gods. And for any given reason, those who put the Manasola, the life force, in Supreme's body, gave him a choice which faction of the Anunnaki to side with. Supreme has gone back and forth on his decision whom to serve, but has more recently sided with Marduk again, as it seems. For Jarl's purposes, as we discussed earlier, it doesn't matter which side SDR, Supreme David Rockefeller, is on. Jarl Vidar probably means well, but he is playing with interdimensional forces he doesn't fully understand, and in his effort to fulfill prophecy, he needs to get in touch with the black arts. After a while, a person who plays both sides in a game where these both sides are destructive, it will certainly cloud one's mind and will backfire. Jarl says that the Stargate is open and ready for the gods to enter. I don't know if this is true or not, but it doesn't matter. The gods are coming within the next 50-90 years. We are living through the introduction stage of the tribulation right now, waiting for the gods to arrive, the Battle of Armageddon, and after that we are facing a 1,000 years of heaven on earth, some say 3,600 years, which is not according to prophecy, but heaven on earth, in my opinion, can only be achieved without the gods. In the ancient past, while the original Anunnaki were still here on earth, in charge of we humans, there were periods where there was peace on earth and people lived happily and in harmony with these creator gods, but it never lasted. The warrior instinct, the jealousy, the power hunger, the great egos of the gods always came to the surface sooner or later, and conflicts and wars broke out again. Personally, I am tired of this kind of past/present/future. I want something better for mankind. I want total sovereignty. We can do it without having the gods show us how to change our own diapers. I know I can do it, and I'm human, so why can't you, and the rest of us? Yes, we have warrior instincts, too, because we are of the same genetics as the gods, but we are still different. We have something they don't have, we have strong emotions. We need to learn how to tame them, but once we do, we are heading for the stars all by ourselves, by connecting via thought and emotion to our oversouls. The strength and the answers how to become a galactic citizen doesn't come from warrior races. Already before we were tampered with by this Syrian race, we had something they lacked, something EA apparently was quite impressed by. We had compassion. Perhaps the reader remembers from a previous paper, how the early, primitive, apes, Homo erectus, sneaked up on EA and opened his traps, so captured animals that were meant for food for EA could run free again. Even though the Anunnaki genes are added to these compassionate forefathers of ours, compassion is a strong trait still in humans, it is even predominant. It never left us, and it is there to serve us into becoming multidimensional and galactic citizens. Maybe one day we can turn this around and be the teachers instead of the students. Perhaps we have a lot of traits we need to teach the Syrians A.M.I. Technologically, we are far behind them, but spiritually we are ahead of them. Do they need us? Perhaps. After all, for EA to distinguish the emotion of compassion in us, he must have felt compassion too, deep inside. Perhaps it was we who taught him how to be more compassionate, and that's why he saved mankind on a few occasions? But in general, do we need them? Not at this point. What about the global elite? Yes, they are here because we need to manage our fear. I have grown out of them. I don't fear them at all. I don't fear Marduk, and I don't fear the incoming. But I love this planet, and I love the idea of a living library. I am also willing to welcome peaceful ETs to visit and trade with us. They give us what W. With us. They give us what we need and we give them what they need. I am not talking about a TTP, technology transfer program, which the government has set up with certain ETs today. I am talking about resources. Food we're growing, minerals, water, supplies. This is what is already happening out there in the universe every day. But we are not included, because we haven't learned how to manage our fear. We are still in the destructive hands of the few, and as long as we are, we will stay in quarantine to protect the off-planet species. A new planet, which vibrates on a much higher frequency than the old Earth. Is that possible? Yes, Jarl, it is. Absolutely. But it can't be achieved by fulfilling prophecies that were made up by the gods who have power and control as their main attribute with intentions to absorb us into their kingdom. No, we need to claim sovereignty over our biokind and this planet. We do so by creating a new one by our own efforts, not to play out the gods against each other again. The Pleiadians said in one of their more recent lectures that there are groups here on Earth who are working with, around, or alongside with prophecy, and some of these groups are working hard to make these prophecies come true. I am aware of 5 groups working with any of the above. They are, the Thule, LPGC, the Wingmakers, the Corridum and the Labyrinth Group, and SALM. The 3 latter groups we will cover in detail as well in the few upcoming papers. What the human race needs is education. We can't gather around certain imperatives if we don't know the options. This is the sole reason I am writing all these papers. Mankind needs to know what's going on so we can make proper decisions, or we'll be caught up in something which will be our demise as a species in the long run. We will end up as cyborgs in a high-tech machine kingdom.